Last year I made the mistake of including my choices in the thumbnail. Not this time though. This list is so weird and out of control that I bet you won't expect what I got cooking this time. Because 2023 was such a great year for film. We got so many bangers, and there are even some films I couldn't see. Can't see Zone of Interest because for some reason they're not releasing it till later in 2024. And I can't even get a poster for Hitman. All I got on IMDb is this still of Glenn Powell. Regardless, I got a lot, and it pains me, physically pains me, that some great films did not make the cut. So here are some honorable mentions of films that I felt were at least 8 out of 10, but didn't make the list. The Holdovers, Monster, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Killer, Dream Scenario, Poor Things, Across the Spider-Verse, John Wick 4, Creed 3, Suzumi, and Radical. If for some odd reason you look to me for recommendations, then even though these aren't top 10 of the year, I'd strongly recommend each of them. With that out of the way, let's piss everyone off with the movie that beat all of these for the 10th spot. Do you know how much trash I got for having Top Gun Maverick in here last year? Well, this is gonna be the Tom Cruise film that does it this year. But if you've actually seen it, you'll know that it's a well-crafted, entertaining spy flick. And the threat in this movie is not your typical world domination nuclear threat. It's actually a pretty relevant danger of artificial intelligence. Now I know AI right now is used in kinda mundane but useful ways. But what if something goes wrong? What might it practically and realistically look like? And furthermore, what can we as humans possibly do to fight something so invasive? And obviously, on top of that, the action and the stunts are there. The twists and turns, it's a good time, and I'll defend this spot to the day I die. In today's world, it sometimes feels like the narratives about others trump their actual identity. This could take the form of blatant stereotypes, but it could also come from the social sciences. Even if there is empirical backing behind these narratives, that's what they ultimately are, narratives. So what happens when you get an individual who doesn't fit the narrative that society has written for him? You get American fiction. Now I know that whole spiel was kinda dry and boring because this is a philosophy channel, but this movie is anything but. It's incredibly funny. Our guy's trying to be as outrageous as he can be, and the world just seems to eat it up, no matter how ridiculous things get. Jeffrey Wright is awesome as this annoyed but still passionate guy, and his approach is hilarious to fight the narrative that tries to define who he is supposed to be. As an attorney, I was pretty hyped that a courtroom drama movie won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival this year, so I obviously had to check it out. But this movie goes further than just a legal drama by also looking into the relationships between characters. Sure, the case concerns whether or not there was a murder, but it also delves into whether or not there was love in this relationship. Instead of just focusing on the logistics of a crime, the issue of whether or not the wife actually loved the husband is evaluated. It's arguably more important than the logistics of the crime, but it's there too if you enjoy courtroom dramas. Also, shout out to Sandra Hüller for a really great performance as the main character. She had to really pull off the loud and expressive moments and the quieter, subtle moments that try to hide the secrets underneath. This year I started getting more into reading manga, since I'm such a big fan of cartoons and Western comics. And a name that kept popping up when researching was Slam Dunk, so I definitely had to check out this movie. And oh man, this movie is an example of great storytelling structure. The entire film takes place within one basketball game, but also takes time to explore the different characters within that game. Now, that might sound like a lot of whiplash going back and forth between the past and the present, but the film does this so smoothly and purposefully that it works out really well. And I mean, if you love sports and the suspense involved, then you'll surely love this movie. The soundtrack and the stakes and the animation, it'll definitely keep you on the edge of your seat. Christopher Nolan has not really been doing it for me lately. I was pretty meh about Dunkirk, and I straight up didn't like Tenet. Still, a film about Oppenheimer sounded interesting, and my god, it was. Here's the best compliment I could give this film. It's 3 hours long, and I felt like I could keep going with it. There are a lot of moving parts and different people, but once I really caught on, it was super engaging. The last third act especially was a great representation of mutually assured destruction, but between Oppenheimer and Strauss. And aw man, I saw this on the big screen and the visuals and sound are absolutely beautiful. I would recommend it, but let's be honest, you've probably already seen it. Now this film is weird, like really weird. But as someone with anxiety, I figured out early on what was going on, and I loved the journey all the way through. Anxiety makes us perceive the world in a certain way, where the worst case scenarios feel like a certainty. In this film, the world becomes a physical manifestation of those thoughts. It actually becomes real. People are always out to get you, there are dangers lurking about, you're late for everything, everyone is watching you, and you're essentially the worst person in the world. It's oddly comforting knowing how unrealistic and outrageous this world is, because it serves as a reminder that our anxious thoughts are not perfect representations of reality. They're hyper unrealistic and bizarre, but it's easy to forget that when you're in the moment. Thankfully, this film is here to remind us of the absurdity of our anxious thoughts when they come up. This film was like drinking an ice-cold lemon lime soda. It's brisk and sweet and just refreshing. You're following these characters going on an adventure with fun and interesting side characters all within a colorful London. Which is new because when I think of London, I think of drab grays and browns that are typical in most cities. But this director decides to highlight some of the more vibrant locations in the city, making it very fun to look at. So you got the chill, colorful vibes, but you also get some great comedy. The scenario here is pretty absurd, but the interactions are wacky, the dialogue is smooth, and it's just a light, fun experience for any occasion. Most of the times when you go to watch a movie, we know it's a movie, because of certain dialogue or story beats. But Past Lives goes beyond that. This film is the definition of hyper-real. It's like comparing a photograph to a cartoon. The story is one we could all relate to. A situation of lost opportunity, of what-ifs that never happened. What happens when you could see what could have been, but can't actualize that path of life? There's a lot of heavy emotions here that hit so hard because it's very human. Like, I felt I was literally just watching normal people living actual lives as opposed to actors working off a script. It's beautiful, bittersweet, and will make you reflect on your own life and the choices you've made that led you here, especially the romantic choices. I was a big Godzilla fan as a kid. My favorite was Godzilla Final Wars because it had so many monsters in it. But you know, these American Godzilla films as of late are just not hitting. The characters in them are written almost like an afterthought, like they're being forced into Godzilla's movie, like oil and water. Here though, the human characters and Godzilla work hand in hand harmoniously. And that's because the human characters are written so well. Sure, none of us have been kamikaze pilots, but we can understand where our main character is coming from. We can understand guilt and fear and a desire for redemption. Another thing I enjoyed about the film was the life-affirming message. You know, sometimes big action movies are just that, but it's still possible to throw in interesting themes like in here. The choice of life, the decision to keep going even in the face of adversity, is one that everyone can find meaning in, and it's greatly explored here. I watched this on a plane on my phone, so the fact that it's #1 means something. But it's difficult to talk about this film because one of the best aspects about it is how it tells its story. How it slowly reveals things to you, just so you could slowly realize how screwed up things are. Like puzzle pieces coming together. I don't want to give you any pieces to start with because it's so rewarding and fascinating to see it come together in the film. So the story is an interesting situation, but the characters are perfect to complement it as well. Each character is almost like two different people. There's the in-denial facade that each character puts up, but then there's the true character behind that mask. And it's really interesting to see who's who in what scene. Which character are you really looking at? And obviously, in a situation like I just described, you need really good actors to make that happen. And all three leads here do an amazing job. Charles Melton in specific. If you know, you know. But please go watch this on Netflix before you read or hear anything about it that could give away the plot. It's a fascinating thing to experience going in blind like I did, even if it was on a plane. And there you have it, those are my top 10 movies of 2023. And in case you don't like my list, here's a couple movies a friend of mine enjoyed instead. Out of all these films, I think Oppenheimer has the best chances at the Oscars, but I'll still hold out hope for May-December, even if things didn't work out for my #1 film of last year. But who cares about them anyways, right? Let me know your thoughts on the list, but more importantly, your own top 10 or top 5 or even top 3 this year. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.